Okay, so hi again. We discussed neuroscience before. It is one big buzzword, but big data is also a very substantial buzzword in recent years. So just maybe so everyone would understand what we're talking about, we'll start with one question, which would be more or less the same to all of you. The first, we'll have to explain what is big data, and then we can also try to think together how we can use big data in education. So do you want to start? Okay.
Okay, hi. My name is Ronen. I'm from Sense Education. My other hat is that I also teach big data in university. And many times I ask this question actually my students. And what I like to say is that before I let you answer what is big data, let's just ask what is the data we are talking about in this specific field. So now we will ask what is the data we are talking about in the specific field of education. Mm-hmm. Okay, what do you think is the data? What do you think is the first-party data in education? Any ideas? What? Grades? Interests? Other suggestions? Age? Demographics? Money? Okay. Well, I would argue something different. I would argue that the most important thing or the most important data in education is what actually kids or students write in their assignments. And by assignments, I mean specifically open-ended assignments, not just multiple choice questions, but really when kids are given a task to do something. This is especially relevant in STEM education, when you need to learn by doing something. So the data, the number one data, the core data, is what they do, what they write in their assignments, in their essays, and so on. So this is about the data. What can be done about it probably the other people here are other opinions, but I think the first thing we should do is give feedback on this data.
So find ways to give feedback that is, of course, not human, or... Well, because we give human feedback already.
We give human feedback, and this is a very good feedback in many cases, but it's not scalable, right?
So give scalable, perhaps.
So now when you need to give scalable feedback on a very large amount of student data, and I mean students' answers, then of course you need some kind of machine learning, some kinds of AI, artificial intelligence to do so.
Yeah. And is this your vision too?
Okay, so hello, my name is David Konopnicki, and well, I'm not an education person, but I'm a big data person, I think, a scientist. I work in IBM research. The type of data that we gather and that interests us is, from one side, content. I mean, for example, take the entire content in Wikipedia and try to create something that can be digested by people. This is from one side, and the other side of the thing that we look at is behavior. Behavior of people. It can be communication in speech, in text, but also visual communication. For example, we look at facial expressions. And so with all this information, so we create technology in order to analyze this type of information, and I mean, developers and other researchers inside the company take those technologies and apply those to education.
So let's try to, maybe as a thought experiment, try to apply it. So you said one thing is to summarize the big amount of data, of knowledge, basically.
Right. So for example, it goes around creating the next version of the search engines. So I think people have been used until the last years that you go to Google, you enter a few keywords, and you get 10 blue links as a result, and then you have to explore this information. Now, the next step that is happening in the few last years is that instead of entering keywords, you can enter a question, a factoid question. As a result, you get a fact, right? So it's a little better because you don't need to read all those texts, but it's for very simple questions. Now, what we are trying to do is to develop systems that are able to handle complex questions. So, for example, you would say, global warming, does it exist or not? Right, and then the system would analyze.
You can see Trump already typing the words. Yes,
and so the system is able to get to all kinds of different sources, extract, both claims and evidences, that would support or contradict claims, and create something that is convincing and is able, to influence somebody.
But wait, I have to interrupt you there, because one thing people have claimed about education and computers is that students are thinking less because we give them the information, so they don't have to look it up themselves or to come up with it themselves. They can just look it up, on Google. But now what you're saying is that they won't have to even, so they would search for it. They won't even have to develop it or to process it in any way. The computer would do it for them too.
I don't know. What I know is that, Plato, in one of his dialogues, is talking about the invention of scripture, right? And he was saying, know that people can read things, people don't know anything by heart, and it's the end of civilization, right? So I think that every generation thinks that we are the last ones that knew something. And it's just, learning will change, and people will be able maybe to get to the next level of reflecting on what they can access more quickly.
So we heard two very different versions of big data and education. Would you like to offer your point of view?
Hello, my name is Yehoyada. I'm from Time to Know, Israel. And for me, big data is about building a profile of the student, of a learner. And the idea is really to see how, through all kind of sensors that we have for the student, we can build and understand the process through which the student learns, understands, and to see his weaknesses and strengths throughout the process. And that's the first part of big data. And the second part, that's after we have the right sensors in the right places, it would be to take this data and turn it into something actionable that both the student and the teacher can use in order to improve their performance.
Okay, so I'm trying to make it more concrete and things that we can, understand on our day-to-day life. So I'm thinking about my spinning class, where they have these effort, bars where they show you how fast you are and if you're too slow, and so you're picturing a similar thing. So there's something that records my brain activity, for example, telling me.
Just imagine that you have all kind of sensors on the desk in class and on your computer and on your cell phone that collect everything that you do. It sees whenever you check your Facebook during class. It sees whenever you answer questions. Mm-hmm. It sees how you answer your assignments.
And then a red light turns on.
At the beginning, it just connects and a lot of sensors. And then you have a processor in the back, a database that collects all those data and puts a profile of your learning curve and what you understand, what you're strong, what you're weak, and gives recommendations to the student and maybe to the teacher or anyone else with interest in the process, how they can improve it.
But isn't it like a little bit like the Big Brother,
I think we all, first of all, it's not like the Big Brother. I think we all part of it because they do it. Our credit card companies do it all the time. They see when we buy, how we buy, and they adjust the coupons and the way we behave. We have Google that does it and improves the search, IBM. We have Siri that does it by learning how we speak, and all kind of systems. It's not a big brother. It's a machine learning. It's something that's personalization that we all want to enjoy.
Michal, how do you see things?
Well, I'll ask a question. Anyone watched Person of Interest? No one? Okay, you should. It's a sci-fi TV series about a programmer that saves lives via surveillance artificial intelligence. He developed a system, the machine, that sifts through enormous amount of data, every cell phone in the world, every email, every surveillance camera, and to actually detect crimes before they happen. We at Symbolab, we developed an artificial intelligence system to solve math. We detect and analyze learning behaviors and to help users improve their math skills and to adopt the learning methods. Our users think that we save lives. So that's what big data is.
No, but can you again go into the details?
Yes,
so
of course.
Explain how it works.
Yes, I just wanted to give an overview.
Yeah, sure.
How far it can go. So what it means to us, what's really big data and how do we save the user lives? We have 40 million users. So to go back to the previous panel and when they had like this really interesting ideas of what things can be tested, if it's a spread out text or anything like that. We actually do these tests every day. It's called A/B testing, and when you have 40 million users, your results are just there. So that's one aspect of what the big data is. Another one is sort of what Ronen was implying to, the actual learning behavior or feedback to the users. Just examples of when to give them hints and how many hints they're using, and when they actually are stopping using hints so we know that they understand the subject, or how long it took them to answer a question, or what method is that makes more sense to them. Just to compare things, like in Israel, when we have a new method of education method, how to teach kids math, I think it took like 10 or 20 years to decide that actually it was all wrong. We have to come up with a different method. It wasn't good. So just think about these 10 or 20 years of kids, they don't know math. So with big data, you can, in a matter of days, understand that something is not working, your new feature, your new method is not working, and adapt accordingly. Using machine learning algorithms, the machine can correct itself.
And you understand what the machine is doing, or is it some kind of deep learning thing that you don't know how it does its magic, but it's working?
When you build machine learning algorithms, at least today, you expect what could happen. You don't know what the results might be, but you know where it can go. You have some sort of control over it. But the deeper it goes, there are more things that you learn, sometimes more surprising, sometimes it's like it makes sense, but you're always there. It's not like that you let it go and you're like at the beach enjoying your margaritas. You're just there with that.
David, I want to go back to you. You spoke about emotion, facial emotions, and trying to process that in a big data manner. Do you see how this can go into education?
Right. So the type of so currently in facial expressions, most of the applications that exist are for marketing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so people are presented, advertisement on their laptops while using, the small camera on the laptop. Advertisers verify, whether people smile at the right places or make sad faces at the right places, etc. So this is currently how it is being used. We believe that it can be used in education, for people that look at online courses in order to detect, their attention, whether they are, they understand, they don't understand, etc. So we are trying to push in this direction, but it's just the beginning. I mean, it's not currently used in education, but this is something that we want to do.
Yes, Yehoyada.
I think that before we go into facial recognition and all this futuristic aspects, I think for us in Time to Know, I think that one of the biggest data sources that is very, very accessible is lost when a teacher sends the students to do a test on a page, or they do homework in their notebooks. All the data that you could have collected from it is lost because it's in the homework, is in the notebook. If somebody reads it and then they don't know how much time it took them to write it, etc. What we do is we collect without something very complicated. We just give the assignments on the computer, and this way we collect their answers. And we don't only analyze the pedagogic, if it's true or false. We also analyze how much time it took them, and the way the number and the selection of answers. And this gives us a lot of data. Now compare it with all kind of attendance and violence and other databases that are available in every school, and you immediately get a profile of the school, of the class, which is eye-opening for every teacher, every inspector, and every person that really wants to improve learning. So you have the vision, and you have very practical things that are already happening in place.
Ronen, you wanted to?
Yeah, actually, it reminded me of a very interesting story that I was told about from one of our team members who previously to working in Sense, he worked for many years in Bar-Ilan University's online learning department, which is not like MOOCs, it's more like the LMS system, which is Moodle and things like that. And he told me something very interesting about computers. So we could have expected that once computers and technology is entering the education space, then things will be better and assessment will be better and so on. Well, he actually noticed the opposite direction. Why? Because computers, you know, by nature, are rigid and structured. And it made all the professors, not all, but many professors, move more and more towards multiple choice questions, towards very, you know, close-ended types of assignments.
So we won't have to spend time checking and marking.
Right, yeah, and because computers are very good in checking multiple choice questions.
Yes.
And you know, Liad, you mentioned the big brother danger, but actually there is a bigger danger. Big brother is, you know, about privacy and so on. I'm talking about learning, I'm talking about education. When you give students those multiple choice questions, those close-ended questions, then you know they actually can use his system. They can actually use the system that just seeks for knowledge, that just seeks for information. What we want them to do is to think and to take a problem and solve a problem and so on, and express their solution in a free-form format.
So
this is a paradox. Unfortunately, without AI, it is a paradox to what.
So what you're saying, we won't be able to change the humans. They will look for the easy way out using the computers. We have to change the computers so they could also mark open-ended questions, and then the researchers, or sorry, the teachers would go back to these types of exams.
Exactly. Yeah, exams and assignments. Yeah.
By the way, because of this reason, our system gives alerts if the answer is too fast or too slow, if they jump over questions, all kind of those things. Again, it's a machine. It depends what you ask it and how you program it. And I think you're very right that this is a way of thinking that it's, you need to use it in a good way, not in a.
But this is still a numerical. I'm talking about free.
Yeah. Just to add to that, we're checking the answers free text, I mean in math, not multiple choice. And not only that, we do it so you can have different ways of answering the same thing, because in math you have different representations and there is no one answer that is correct. Eventually it's all the same, but different representations. And I think it's very important to note that the whole idea, the way we work is we work around the students, not the teachers, not the professors. So if the goal is to make it easier for the professors to assess the kids or students, so the test will be faster and all that. I agree that there is a danger that it will go too far and you will actually miss the way. If you go from the goal or the objective is to actually help kids learn and understand math, it's easier to
But I think maybe it's easier for us to understand how a computer would be able to assess my performance in math. I'm wondering if you could write the algorithm that would enable the computer to say whether my argument is creative, whether it's valid logically, whether I'm making good solid points. I think for the layman, this seems like something that is uniquely human. But I guess all the four of you would probably disagree.
Okay. I think in natural language processing, we can, currently in state of the art, we can say a few things about, given an essay, we can test whether the right subjects are being addressed. We can give a grade about, how it is readable, how it is logically consistent, but it's possible to fool the computer, right? So you can write sophisticated nonsense.
But it's also possible to fool the teacher. Let's be honest about it.
So you can write sophisticated nonsense and get a good grade. But if you are able to write sophisticated nonsense, maybe you deserve a good grade. So I don't know.
That's also a way to look at it. But I also wonder, because what you're saying sounds, I spoke before about Fantasyland, so it sounds a bit like that, but it's also, I have to ask, am I the only one feeling a bit intimidated by all this? So, no, I'm not the only one.
And are you intimidated by Facebook?
No, so let me tell you the several ways for which I could be intimidated. So by the way, about Facebook, I don't upload pictures of myself and my kids because I am intimidated by Facebook. So one thing is privacy.
But you're intimidated by the sharing. You're not intimidated by the face.
Yeah,
the fact that Facebook is building a profile, saying if you're optimistic, if you're a pessimistic person, if you like mornings, if you like evenings, because they do.
Yeah, I know. So this is what. So I'm trying to think specifically about education. So it's intimidating that maybe teachers would have too much information about their students. Maybe they would discover things that the students don't want them to know. It's intimidating that maybe computers would someday replace the teachers, which, if you're a teacher, could be quite intimidating, I guess. So I'm wondering whether this kind of fear that some of us might be feeling, or some kind of anxiety, is it justified in your opinions? Are there also dangers in having computers inside, or artificial intelligence inside our classrooms? And also, one more thing that could be intimidating is, so maybe there is something important about humanity in the classroom, in the sense that we want to have that not computerized in a way, if you understand my romantic sense of teaching and learning, maybe. And maybe the kids will become computer-like and not humans-like, which is also quite frightening. So please address all our concerns.
I actually think it is a very good question. And I always say that in artificial intelligence, the trick, and not only in education, but also in education, the trick is always to know and to let computers do what computers do best, let humans do what humans do best, and not mixing the two. And I will explain. So, let me put it this way. We all know how stupid Siri is, right? and the bots alike. So, could you really imagine in your Fantasyland an AI that will be really able to understand what students write, to understand whether it's right or wrong, and to give the appropriate feedback? I think maybe we will get to that point, but not in the near future. I can explain, because of many reasons, what is the reason. So right now, it's actually not wise to give AI do the whole shebang, do the whole process. What we should do is let computers do what computers do best. And this is pattern recognition and clustering. Because even if you have 100 or 1,000 students in class, and you ask them a question, and this is less in the romantic fields, more in the STEM fields, there are not so many ways, not 1,000 different answers that you would receive. There are patterns, there are clusters, you can divide actually all the students into just a few groups.
I think Michal is
and
thinks
then
otherwise, maybe?
Yes.
But this is, this is in mathematics, because in mathematics, it's easy for the computers to read mathematics because it's readable by computers.
Yeah, but until we didn't do that, people didn't think it's easy and it makes sense. I agree that there is danger and we should be careful and we should be thinking about it. But to be honest, the reason 70% of the population suffers from math anxiety, you can't blame AI for that. So to have a good teacher, that's a gift for life. But how many of us really had good math? I'm talking about math because that's my passion. Math teachers, or even my kids. I see how school goes. So yes, it would be great to have a great teacher who would know how to use the technology and to teach and to combine everything. But we are where we are because of the education system and other problems. So if a computer can help me understand math or even build my confidence, because that's one of the biggest problem, and I'm not even going to talk about gender differences and teachers. So to me, that's a much better approach than relying on a teacher to be good or to be sensitive to the different kids. You can also use adaptive learning and not only in math.
I just think that if you use it in a smart way, then you turn those tools into a power tool for teachers and for students. It's not going to replace teachers. It's not going to replace the students. It's a new tool. It's something that people didn't have. And you can look at many things. We're talking about the car industry and fintech, and we're talking about advertising. All those places, it's not that computers replaced the professionals. It just created a new tool that made everything much more targeted, and the sector and profiling, and this is exactly where the tools, if they're used in the right way.
Maybe a little bit different point. I think that, we are just companies, right? We develop technology and we gather data about users. Now, and as companies, our goal is also to make profit. I think that we are not the only one in the games here, and there need to be, some way to involve both companies and educators and philosophers and legislators, to try to solve those problems together. And the good example that we see is, for example, in Europe, where it's possible for example, to limit Google and to make them, forget some information when it's not needed. And we have bad examples, for example, in the US right now, where the Senate decided to sell, private information to people, to companies. So, I mean, it's a whole ecosystem and not just the technologists.
So I see our clock turned red, so I think this probably cues us to end this discussion, but it was very interesting and thought-provoking, and I want to thank the four of you for opening a new gate of imagination for us. Thank you very much.